discuss. Conservative radio host Ben Ferguson, former DHS chief of staff in the first Trump administration, Mr. Miles Taylor. Ben, I feel like you got to think it's a good thing this guy's gone, no?
Yeah, no, I'm glad he's gone. I'm glad he resigned. If you can't serve the president of the United States of America and what he is doing in his mission, then you should absolutely leave. I think the way he's doing it is the oddest part about him, because he, in essence, lied to the president about what he thought about foreign policy to get the job based on what he's saying now. You go back to his own tweets that are still out there. In January of 2020, he posted, "Trump's red line is America loss of life and Iranian nuke development. I personally think we should have crushed their ballistic and nuke capabilities. But Trump has a plan. He has definitely earned the confidence of any clear-eyed observer." So it's not that the president changed. It's that Joe Kent changed. He decided to change his foreign policy. But what I really think this is about, if you talk to people around the White House, he didn't like the fact he wasn't in the room when the decisions were being made. He wanted to be, I guess, the Secretary of State or the man in charge of the Pentagon. And he was a tier 2 guy. That's not, by the way, meant in a negative way. You need a lot of tier 2 guys. But he wasn't in the room for the big decision. And so he got his feelings hurt. And then he decided, okay, well, now I'm going to just, be a crybaby. I'll go on Tucker Carlson's show and sing isolationism, and I'll go on Megyn Kelly's show right after that and do the same thing. That's who Joe is now. It's sad, it's unfortunate, but I'm glad he's gone, because he clearly wasn't serving the president. He was serving his own interests.
Yeah, he'd be serving his own bank account, too, because that's why these guys are saying this stuff. Look, again, I don't have any problem,
He'll make
Miles.
a lot of money.
I don't have any problem questioning whether this was the right move, this is the right way, this is the right time with Iran. I have no problem with that. They're all legitimate points of contention. But do you have concerns that the president's saying things like, "I'll pull out of NATO and we don't need the allies"? You think he's got some people around him telling him some really dumb stuff?
No, I don't.
Well,
I think what the president is saying...
You can't hog the whole damn conversation, man. You can't hog the whole thing. You're not even Irish. Miles, go ahead.
I suspect the thing that Ben and I agree on is Joe Kent. I mean, I don't think Joe Kent should have ever been in this administration. I was saying when Joe Kent was hired for this job that it was an abomination that a guy who defended people who went and attacked the United States Capitol, who Trump's FBI director at the time called a domestic terrorist attack, would be in charge of counterterrorism for the United States. But here's the problem, as you point to, Chris, is he's not the only one. There's not just one Joe Kent inside this administration. There is an army of Joe Kents inside this administration who have mainstreamed conspiracy theories, who have outlandish views, and who are some of the same people who poorly advised the president on this conflict. Now, look, I've been a hawk on Iran for years. This is no regime we should be apologizing for. We shouldn't be sad the Ayatollah's gone. But there was a stupid way to do this and a smart way to do this. And the president was surrounded by a whole lot of people who wanted to give him the stupid way to do this. One example just being the Strait of Hormuz, Chris. I think I've said to you before, in my graduate school war games on Iran, the Strait of Hormuz was one of the first things that came up, that the Iranians would close in a conflict. For some reason, that was not something the president seriously considered.
Yeah, I don't think...
You're making up crap. Sorry, like, the president has talked about the Strait of Hormuz for, like, years. He talked about it in his first administration. To act as if Donald Trump didn't know they were going to try to close the Strait of Hormuz is just a flat-out lie to the American people. He had talked about it, not privately, publicly. He had talked about it publicly. He told advisors, Ben, he didn't think they would go forward with it. That's why they went. He literally didn't think. He has now already publicly, Ben, as you know, expressed surprise. I disagree with that assessment as well.
All right, that's fine. I want to move on to something else, but I'll tell you what. Let me knit the two together. I don't think that the Strait of Hormuz becoming a tactical point for the regime is a surprise to anybody. I think they gamed it out 100 different ways. However, I don't think they anticipated how many drones they had and what the reach would be, and they're trying to figure that out now kinetically. I think two things can be true at the same time. Either way, you're left in the same place. Ben, help me understand why you would alienate allies now. You know where we are. You know what it's going to take to get where we want to be. Why would you want to go it alone?
I don't think we've alienated allies. I think we are realizing that, unfortunately, we have a lot of allies right now that have really weak leaders, and they don't have the cojones to stand up to Iran. That's the reason why Iran got so close to a nuclear weapon. That's the reason why Iran has been able to sponsor so much terrorism around the world.
Ben, you go and you punch a psycho in the face without telling me, okay? We all agree he's a psycho. You go punch him in the face without telling me. I have his cousins living in my house. You don't. And now you expect them to just jump in when you tariff them, you trash talk them, and now you have them with a situation where they may have to deal with crazy Islamists in their own country.
They already deal with crazy Islamists in their country. Look at the UK, because they've been weak on the issue. And I think the president looked at the assessment and said, A, I have to do this and make sure that it doesn't get leaked out. And B, guys like Starmer, I probably don't trust not to leak, or the people around him. And there's other leaders as well. And when you're dealing with those types of leaders that are very weak and not standing up, even in their own country, to Islamic extremists, then why would you think they would go with you on this one? I think the president's point is clear. I had to do the right thing. Others were not willing to do it. They were willing to send pallets of cash to the Ayatollah, not actually take him out. And so when the president's dealing with that, you go to your allies after the fact and you say, hey, I did the heavy lifting here. It's easy now to get involved. You can do the back end of this with me and we can have a coalition. And they said no. And if that's what the president was expecting, by the way, that's what I would have expected. I think that's what Marco Rubio expected. That's why they did it this way, is they understood, looking at the room, taking the temperature, seeing what they did in the last administration, there was a very slim chance our allies were going to jump to this occasion. So we did the right thing. We did it from a national security standpoint. And then you say, if you want to join us on the easy part, on the end, we'd love to have you. And guess what? They're saying no. I'm not surprised.
I think bombing is easy. I think this is the hard part. I think that getting them rooted out and giving the Iranians a position where they can actually make a change, I think is much easier said than done. But Miles, what's your take?
Well, look, I mean, if Ben was the European Union and Europe, and I was the United States, and I went to Ben and I said, Ben, I'm going to steal part of your backyard, and if you don't give it to me, I'm going to invade you. And then 2 weeks later, I went to Ben's house and said, hey, Ben, can you help me out with a problem I get into down the street? I'm not going to get a good response. This is what just happened with Greenland in the administration and Donald Trump's quixotic odyssey to try to go seize the territory of an ally.
So you would have not done tariffs.
You can do what you want
because of Iran. That's your foreign policy.
On it. And then he says, hey, now I need your help on another thing. Ben, you and I both know the president has treated our closest allies like a jerk treats his friends when he should have been collaborating.
When you need a chiropractic adjustment, buddy, you don't go to the one that's real soft. You get it done. And the president knew we had a big problem with tariffs and we had trade issues and an imbalance, and he fixed it. And that is completely separate from national security issues with Iran. You cannot mix the two together. You would be a terrible advisor to the president if you're saying, hey, on trade policy, do this, but don't do this with a power that's going to get a nuclear weapon. That's how people die, by the way.
That the president's biggest liability right now is the fact that Americans, red, white, and blue, Democrat and Republican, cannot believe he slapped taxes on him in the form of tariffs. Do not tell me that the president's strongest position has been rebalancing trade. It's put him in the weakest political position he's ever been in.
If your foreign policy and national security, you're connecting to trade and differences of countries are taking advantage of us, that is the reason why they separate national security teams from economic teams. They do. You cannot have these two intertwined the way you're describing it.
I know, but
that's how people would die.
The idea that one doesn't influence the other is also a little naive. Look, here's what we all know.
Influence maybe, but you don't not invade a country that's trying to kill you because of trade issues in the economic
That's not what he's suggesting. Here's what we all know, okay? The tariffs didn't help, and the president needs allies. This is not the easy part. This is not going to end anytime soon. And I'm telling you, what I've seen in Lebanon is going to shock people when it hits their screens here. And we're going to be in a whole new phase of paranoia about what this means. The more friends America has, the better. Ben, I appreciate you. Thank you for being here. Miles, absolutely, 100%. Now you'll know who your friends are. The question is, can you make more? Miles, appreciate you both. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Thank you for being with me, brothers. Appreciate it.
Likewise.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.